The note was written in a hand so careful it looked printed, and it said, "They're not looking, but they're always watching." Amelia found it tucked inside a hollow in the door frame. Not a crack, a compartment, deliberate and old. She'd only found it because she collects doorknobs, because she touches every door like it owes her something. The archives building had 43 doors. She'd checked them all before. She hadn't checked inside them. She stood very still in the dusty corridor, holding a slip of paper that someone had hidden there to be found. The building's records went back to 1887, where they were supposed to. What Amelia actually found were gaps, not missing files, which would have been logged, but absences that had been papered over, dates that jumped, minutes from town meetings that referenced decisions with no prior discussion, a deed for the archives building itself that listed the original owner as the Ravenswood Collective, a name that appeared nowhere else. She pulled census records from 1923 and found a population of 1,400. The 1924 census listed 1,401. No births recorded in between. No one had moved to Ravenswood. Someone had simply appeared. The founders' photographs were stored in a flat archival box on the third shelf, mislabeled as miscellaneous, agricultural. 12 men and 4 women posed formally in front of a stone building that no longer existed. What stopped Amelia wasn't their faces. It was their expressions. Identical. Not just similar. The same angle of mouth, the same softness around the eyes, the same quality of stillness. She lined the photographs up on the light table and checked the dates. They spanned 30 years. Different occasions, different clothes, different ages. The same smile, exactly every time. The déjà vu started small. She turned a corner in the stacks and knew, before she turned, that there would be a broken chair. There was. She reached for a box, and her hand moved to the right shelf without looking. She'd never been in that part of the archives. She told herself it was pattern recognition, the brain doing what brains do. But then she walked into the East reading room and felt the air change, a pressure behind her sternum, low and physical, like a held note. She left immediately. That evening, walking home, she avoided 3 streets she'd always used. She didn't know why until she was already past them. Mrs. Jenkins lived on Aldermore Street in a house with ceramic pots along every windowsill. She offered tea and then spent 10 minutes not answering questions. She talked about the weather, the library renovation, her daughter in Morgantown. Amelia waited. When she finally said the word quarry, something shifted in the old woman's face. Not fear exactly, more like the look of someone who has decided not to remember something. "That's been closed a long time," Mrs. Jenkins said. Then, quietly, looking at her tea, "They moved the stone out of there before I was born. I don't know where it went." She did not look up again. The quarry wasn't closed. That was the first thing. The gate was new, the gravel raked, the chain-link fence recently replaced. And inside the quarry, arranged in a grid of 7 rows, stood 49 stone sculptures, each one identical, a rough column, chest height, the local gray limestone. Amelia walked between them and heard it, not with her ears at first, but in her jaw, in her back teeth. A hum, low and even impatient. She pressed her palm flat against the nearest column. The hum moved up through her hand and settled somewhere behind her eyes. She pulled her hand away. The hum did not stop. She stood in the center of the grid and took her pulse. Then she stood still and waited. She took it again 2 minutes later. Her heartbeat had slowed, not dramatically, but measurably, and it had settled into a rhythm that matched the stones. She knew this because she counted both simultaneously and they aligned. That was when the question changed shape. It was no longer whether something strange was happening in Ravenswood. It was whether she was capable of noticing it clearly or whether the noticing itself was being managed. She walked back to her car and sat for 20 minutes before she trusted herself to drive. The paper was from 1987, published in a journal she'd never heard of, authored by someone at a university that had since closed. It was about infrasound, frequencies below 20 hertz, below the threshold of hearing, above the threshold of feeling. The paper documented experiments in which specific infrasonic frequencies triggered measurable changes in mood, memory formation, and suggestibility. One passage was underlined in the library's copy, in pencil, by someone who'd borrowed it in 1991. The ideal medium for sustained infrasonic transmission would be a dense, consistent stone with a low natural dampening coefficient. She knew what kind of stone Ravenswood was built on. All of it. Every foundation, every wall. She started watching people the way she watched documents, for inconsistency. And she found it. Not in what they did, but in the timing. Tuesday morning. For separate residents checked their watches at 10:14, none of them in conversation with each other. Thursday afternoon, walking down Main Street, she counted 6 people smile at nothing in the span of 90 seconds. She filmed it on her phone. Watching it back, she could see what she'd missed in the moment. The smiles didn't just happen at the same time. They were the same smile, the same angle, the same softness. The one she'd seen in the photographs. 30 years of founders. Now everyone. The visions didn't feel like visions. They felt like memories. She'd be cataloging something ordinary, and then she'd be somewhere else, standing in a room she'd never seen, watching a man write in a ledger, watching a woman press her ear to a stone wall and smile. The woman always smiled. At the end of the third vision, the woman turned and looked at her, and Amelia realized she recognized the face. Not from town, not from any photograph. She recognized it the way you recognize your own handwriting, before you've consciously processed what you're seeing. She went home and looked in the mirror for a long time. The clock tower door had a knob she'd noticed months ago. Brass, hexagonal, unusual. She'd thought about it. She'd gone back twice just to look at it. That should have been her first warning. Inside, behind a false wall she found because she pressed every surface, was a room with equipment she didn't recognize and logs she did. 12 binders, dated 1952 through 2014. Names, dates, frequency adjustments. Notes on subjects. The language was clinical, the entries methodical. She found her own name on page 4 of the 2001 binder. Not as a resident. As a subject. Amelia Gray, it said. Placement confirmed. Memory architecture stable. She turned the page. The final entry was from March 2015. 7 months ago. It said her archive position had been arranged. That her interest in doors had been cultivated. That her tendency toward obsessive pattern recognition made her useful as a stress test, someone who would eventually find the seams, and whose finding could be observed and managed. The experiment didn't fear discovery. It had planned for it. She was not the archivist who stumbled onto the truth. She was the archivist who was supposed to, so they could watch what happened when someone did, and refine the frequencies accordingly. Ravenswood didn't have a flaw she'd found. She was the flaw. Built in, on purpose, from the start.